Hello, welcome back to another tutorial of the Intellijel Shapeshifter by Intellijel. As you can tell from the title, we're going to be covering a lot of ground in this tutorial, so let's get to it. The first mode we're going to look at is Chord mode. Chord mode is activated with this button right here, and by pushing that you will notice that the display will give you some sort of readout that is changeable. This is changing the different chords that are going to be sent out through output 1. Now, I should back up just a second and say that we've been operating on the assumption this whole time that this is just a 2-oscillator synthesizer. It's actually not. Output 1 is made up of 8 different oscillators, and when not in chord mode, those 8 oscillators are summed together. When in chord mode, you can actually access different transposition levels for each of those different oscillators. Maybe the place to start would be listening to unison in chord mode. I'll take it out of chord mode just for comparison. You can hear that there is a noticeable drop in the amplitude. You might be wondering why there is even a unison when you're in chord mode, and the reason is that we can actually take all 8 of those different oscillators and bend them out of tune, detune them, and we can access that through this parameter right here. You'll notice it's blue, that corresponds to the blue-colored chord mode here. So when we press detune, you see we get a detune amount. If we press it again, we can use the mod B to change that, and you can hear the detuning happening. Another feature that we can access, that you'll notice it's blue, it says drive, and that's an alternative to tilt. So I'm going to turn off detune, and we'll listen to the overdrive function. Now, of course, in chord mode, you probably want to access something other than just unison, detuned oscillators, and we can access the different chords over here on the left. It says chord type in blue. So choosing that brings our cursor back up, and let's take a listen to some of the different possibilities we have. I'll go ahead and stop right there and then also indicate that there is, if you press this chord type multiple times, you'll get TU, which stands for tuning. We have 2 different types of tuning going on, and listening to just those simple intervals there, you can actually tell a difference, and maybe I'll switch back and forth, but you have the option of just intonation and equal temperament. Those are accessed through this chord button. So with this major chord, I'll show you the intonation options. Here's just, and here's equaled. It's a subtle difference. I'll keep going with the chords. Mixing it up. Sorry, skipped one. And back to unison. So you can see there's a lot of chord options that are available. You can of course change the fundamental of each of those chords through the pitch input CV. And just to be clear, those chords are not available on output 2. I'll play with chord mode using the Detune and Drive, and I'll play with the tuning. One option that is not available is the ability to change the different chords based on a CV input. That's something that I wish that was available. We can work around this once we get into preset mode, which we'll address in another tutorial. Next up, we're going to be looking at the delay feature built into the Shapeshifter. This is a fairly simple delay line, but it can be pretty powerful, pretty fun. Right now I have a patch set up similar to what we built in the previous tutorial, where I'm using the percussion mode just to trigger a short envelope with this LFO. I'm also integrating the chord mode that we just explored. I'm going to activate delay by pressing delay right here. You'll see it doesn't say delay, it says echo for whatever reason. Same as always, we can adjust the echo up here using this, or we can assign it to mod B, which is what I'll do right now. Notice too that I've put oscillator 2 into LFO mode. This is really critical because the delay frequency, the delay time, is set by the frequency of oscillator 2. So when we turn up mod B, we're going to start to hear a little bit of the delay happening. Mod B here, this parameter for delay, is a little confusing. It's a combination of the feedback amount and the overall wet-dry mix. The further I turn this to the right, the wetter it gets, and the furthest I turn it to the left, the drier it gets, to the point where it's just going to be only output 1 without any delay. Let's change the delay time. Let's turn up a little bit of the echo, and to change the delay time, we have to adjust the frequency of output 2. Now, just like any digital delay line, you're going to hear some artifacts from changing this in real time. Use that to your advantage. Now, if we take this out of LFO mode, we're going to be getting some comb filtering happening because the delay time is so fast that it's actually in the audio frequency. So I'm going to turn off percussion mode just so we can hear this. If we turn this all the way to the right, we essentially make a loop, and we freeze whatever is in that loop. When we're not in LFO mode, that loop is going to be not very useful. So let me put it back into LFO mode, percussion mode. And show you how we can trap something in this loop. So you notice what I did is I waited until I heard it enter the loop, and then I turned this all the way hard right, which essentially sets the loop. So to clear the loop, we have to turn it all the way back past 0, past the midway point, and then to set it again. It's not an exact science. So once we've trapped something, we can play with it by changing the size of the digital delay line. So what might be really fun at this point is to turn this off. And instead of using a synth sound built into this, use some external input, say like a drum loop or something like that, and use that to get a delay effect or to do some sort of looping effect. So I have this gray cable right here. This is a drum loop that's coming out of my computer. And the way the shapeshifter works to get signals into it is through the mod A input. So going into mod A, we need to backtrack and go up to mod A. Right here you can see phase 2 is just what we have it set at. And instead we're going to choose combo 1. And what that means is it's going to be sending out this signal through the oscillator 1 combination output. What that means is essentially it's coming out output 1 here, but it's subject to all of the things that we could do to output 1 before. It basically replaces the synthesizer voice that's in there with this signal. So for demonstration, I'll listen to output 1, and we should just get the recording of the drum loop. Let's see. And we don't, because I have delay on still. So let's turn that all the way off. What else is stopping it? Oh, right. We need to turn up the pot for mod A. And there we have our drum loop coming through, and now we can do something to it like put a delay on it. So let's enter delay mode here and use mod B. So I'm going to make a pretty long delay line here. Well, I can do that. The maximum delay time is set hard left with with oscillator 2 in LFO mode. You can hear it kind of cleaning itself up here, getting rid of those artifacts. And now what we can do is do a loop using the method we were just doing. So wait till I'm satisfied with my loop, and then turn this to basically lock in the loop. And I can kind of play with the pitch a little bit by changing the delay time here. Notice it takes a little bit of time to react. You can also use the delay effect to create a sort of rudimentary looper. Right now I have a synthesizer line coming into the mod A input, and I've set the delay to be as long as possible, which means ratio all the way to hard left there. Of course, oscillator 2 is in LFO mode. This is what the synthesizer sounds like. And when I've found a loop that I want to make, I'm going to turn this to the right to lock it in. And then I can start to overdub on top of this by playing something and just turning this knob up enough to grab it, and then turning it back down hard right to capture it. It's a little tricky. Let's go ahead and take oscillator 2 out of LFO mode and listen to our comb filter on this drum loop. I want to point out too that now that we know how to get an external signal into the shapeshifter via mod A, that we don't have to just go into combo 1, and the shapeshifter is not just good for delay. Let me show you under mod A. We also have the option of doing combo 2, which means that it will come out of oscillator 2. We can, for instance, combine our external signal with oscillator 2 via combo mode. And let's take a listen to some of the options that we have there. So here's output 1. And of course, combo mode, oscillator 1, we're just listening to oscillator 1, but now we can check out, say, ring modulation. And we're in oscillator 2 is in LFO mode here. If I take it out of, and we can change the oscillator, the wavetable for oscillator 2. Going back to combo mode. You can see you can highly distort these. So you can hear there's a lot of sonic possibilities for mangling your external input here through the combo modes as well as tilt. Alright, and the last topic I want to look at is the vocoder. The vocoder here is a pretty simple implementation of a 64-band vocoder. And the way the vocoder works is it goes through 2 stages, has 2 primary elements. The first element is the modulator. The second element is the carrier. And both of these signals are going to be passed through 64 bandpass filters. The modulator has attached to each one of those filters a envelope follower, and those envelope followers each connect to and control the amplitude of the 64 bandpass filters of the carrier signal. And so the relationship between the modulator and the carrier is basically when you're listening to the output of the vocoder, you're hearing mostly the carrier, but its individual amplitudes of those bands is modified by the spectrum of the modulator. On the shapeshifter, we have access to both of those primary components to the vocoder, both the modulator and the carrier. So let's do some pretty classic vocoding. We have a signal coming in that is a vocal sample, and right now if we listen to it out of output 1, each other, the pain is sweet. And if we smother each other in a brief and terrible sucking in together of our breaths, you'll hear that it's just my voice reading something. Is beautiful. Let's turn that off. And I don't want to listen to that. To access the vocoder features, we're going to go back to mod A. You'll see it's still in combo mode. That's how we could listen to it coming out clean. And we're going to instead choose vocoder mod, standing for the modulator signal. And so now we're going to be vocoding this external signal with the content of oscillator 1. So let's listen to output 1 here. Now it doesn't sound like much, and it brings up a good point. Right now, oscillator 1 is in the basic set, and it's set to a sine wave. And with just a sine wave, there's not a lot of spectral interest. In fact, there's barely any at all. And so running through our vocoder, my complex signal of my voice is trying to activate a spectrum in this sine wave that just doesn't exist. So The rule of thumb here is that the carrier signal needs to be fairly noisy. So, for instance, if I were to switch this to a sawtooth wave,
they come closer, they merge into one, and the two cyclopses look at each other, blending as they breathe. Our mouths touch and struggle in gentle warmth.
square wave,
Barely holding their tongues on their teeth. Playing in corners, where the air comes and goes, with an old perfume in a silence.
Now it's kind of fun to put this into chord mode,
And there is one
much more musical sounding.
flavor of ripe fruit, and I feel you tremble against me like a moon on the water. I touch your mouth. I touch the edge of your mouth with my finger. I am drawing it as if it were something my hand was sketching. As if, for the first time, your mouth opened a little, and all I had to do is close my eyes and erase it and start all over again. Every time, I can make the mouth appear. The mouth which my hand chooses and sketches on your face, and by which some chance that I do not seek to understand coincides exactly with your mouth which smiles beneath the one my hand is sketching on you.
We can go even further and add, say, some comb filtering to this by turning on our delay with oscillator 2 in regular audio mode.
Two cyclopses look at each other, and if we smother each other in brief and terrible sucking in together of our breaths, that momentary death is beautiful. And there is but one saliva and one flavor of ripe fruit, and I feel you tremble against me like a moon on the water.
So you can see there's just a world of possibilities by combining delay, chord mode, and vocoder. I do want to show you what happens when we reverse the relationship between the modulator and the carrier in the vocoder. So let's take a listen to our classic vocoding relationship here.
Closer you look at me, closer and closer.
Now let's change that by going to mod A. Instead of using this external signal as the modulator, let's use it instead as the carrier. And now you can see we have vocoder, carrier. Now if you think about this, what we're actually doing is we're accessing 64 bandpass filters, and we're able to control the way this external signal is being filtered by our modulator signal, which happens to be oscillator 1. So if I change, say, the frequency or the shape of oscillator 1, you'll hear more complex spectral filtering happening to my voice here. So here's a simple frequency sweep using a sine wave out of oscillator 1 to shape our carrier, which is me speaking. Start all over again. Every time I can make the mouth I want appear, the mouth which my hand chooses and sketches on your face, and by which some... Let's go and listen to something else. So I'm modifying my oscillator 1 here by putting it into chord mode, and that will just further shape the filtering that is happening to our drum loop. I could turn on tilt or overdrive, turn on the decay, turn on some delay, I also want to point out the possibility of not using an external signal to do vocoding, and this gives you a similar sort of wave shaping or spectral filtering that we just did on the drum loop, but you can apply that to any one of the different waves that we have here. So the way we have to do that is by taking the output of output 2 and just substitute that into the mod A input. And then everything is just exactly how we did this before. So listening to the output of output 1 here, you can hear that we are vocoding output 1 with output 2. It's set up so that output 2 is acting as the modulator and output 1 is the carrier. So you can hear there's a lot of sonic possibilities just using the shapeshifter by itself without even using an external signal. And with that, I feel like I'm at an end here with these different features. I'm tempted to call them extras in the sense that they're not really fully developed. For instance, the vocoder could have a lot more features. The chords could be more easily accessible through CV. The delay is just so simple. It doesn't have really any features to it. It's just a delay line. But at the same time, they do seem sort of integral. We can use these to really augment the characteristics of an oscillator. And so I think thinking about them less as these digital effects that you can run external signals through, you can really focus on using them simply to sculpt your sounds, to continue shaping the raw waveforms that come with this. And in a sense, it really is integral. They're not extras at all. And I find myself using them all the time. So with that, thank you for watching another tutorial. Hope to see you in the next one.